So here I am at my workstation at work. I'm just doing an odd video for Rich, and I have this little problem in that my workstation monitor is really low compared to how I stand, because I stand all the time at my workstation to do my work, and I use tools and all that all day long, and I need to use my monitor. However, after a day of work and I'm looking down at my monitor like this all the time, my neck and shoulders really start to get sore. So my project today that I'm going to do is basically I'm going to lift this monitor to a more comfortable height. Now, I could have done it the regular way that most people do. They either stick a box underneath it, or they stick telephone books or bricks or whatever. But I thought I'd do something a little more nicer, a little more fancier. And I tried to keep my budget down to about 50 bucks to do it. So we'll go through it and I'll show you what I've done. So I went down to my local hardware store and I purchased a few items. So the first thing you see right up front here, of course, is a 8-inch wide. It was 3 feet long, but I cut it to 2 feet wide, 2 feet in length, 1 inch thick piece of pine. Usually this is a finished pine that they've already pre-sanded. It's okay. You can use just a standard pine, but I found that the other stuff actually wasn't 8 inches across. So I picked up this one because it is an 8-inch across. Now, the reason I did that is if you take a look, you'll see that these are your standard hang off the wall bookshelf rails. Now, they were white. I also painted those black because it's for my workstation. My workstation's all black, so I wanted to all match. So I painted those black. And as you can tell, you got your standard shelf piece hangers right there on a 24-inch rail that has the knockout, so you can adjust it to the height you need. Alright, so that's what I did there, and this here is just a 3/4 inch dowel. Again, I painted it black because that way it matches the workstation, but I wanted to leave the wood its natural color. And what I did for the wood is I sanded it, and if you look, the edge on it is routed. I routed the edge so it's got a bit of a round edge, not so much a square edge. I sanded her down, and then I used an acrylic satin finish on it. You also notice that there's these notches in there on my board here, and the reason for those notches is that's where the feet of the monitor are going to lock into up front to keep it from sliding side to side. And I'll show you how I'll lock this all together when I'm done, and I'll show you little video bits along the way. So as you can see, what I'm doing here to the bench right now is I'm mounting the uprights, and the way I'm doing that, of course, is as you can tell, I'm screwing them in several different places, right there and right there, onto the back of this workbench on the thickest material. The screw I'm using right now is 1 1/4 inch. I'm using a washer, and that's basically a drywall screw, a number 6 drywall screw, because it's small enough and has a pretty good grip for what I need. So that's what I've been putting in here to mount these uprights. Now, the other thing that I did while mounting these uprights is I actually used a level and a measuring tape. So what I did is I made sure that these are, somewhat level. I'm not a perfectionist. As long as the bubble is in the right area, that's pretty good. And then what you want to do, of course, is make sure that they're at the right heights. And the other thing that I did is I put my shelf in there, just to get an idea when I put my shelf on, is it level? Right? That way I've got all 3 dimensions figured out, and I can then screw it all tight to the bench, and that is what I'm doing. Alright, so here I am, and what I'm going to do now is, like I told you before, I got a hole in the center, and I got my pole here that I'm going to put in underneath here to add as a stability brace, so that it will the thing won't flop around. It'll actually stabilize the whole platform. It's not, it doesn't really take all that much, just something there. What I did is like I said before, I drilled a hole in the desk. So what I'm doing is I'm going to stick a screw up through the hole like this, kind of give that a little tie so it'll hold steady. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my level here and actually make sure that I'm level on the front, back, and again, put that down, level on the back, and then I'm going to draw, what I did is I drew a circle underneath here. Okay? So now once you've taken that, you can then unscrew this a little bit, take your pole out of the way, grab hold of your shelf, and where I drew the circle right here, then I could drill a hole center of that, because what's going to happen is I'm going to put a screw through the top, and I'll show you when I'm done. The other thing that I did too is just to make sure I've got it right. Excuse my hands, 1 sec. Is also measured the sides of my shelf and made sure that I'm even on both sides, so that way I can have this centered properly, because you want it centered properly. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, as you can tell, this table now is on here. It's looking pretty good. The problem is the monitor I'm going to put on here weighs approximately 10 pounds or 8 kilos, because it's an all-in-one system. And the problem with that is if you put that on there, you see it all flexes. And I need to stabilize that so it doesn't do that, especially if I'm moving my bench around or whatever. And that was part of the reason for these notches, is to help stabilize the monitor while I'm moving around. What I'm going to do is, if you look here on the table, I've already drilled a hole about the center of the table, and I'm going to stick a pole up to the shelf to give it stability so it doesn't bounce around. Basically, I'm building a kind of tripod system, and it'll look pretty cool when it's done. Kind of give it a semi-professional look, and we'll see what it looks like when I got it done. So there's kind of what the table looks like on top of my my workbench to lift the whole monitor up. And you can tell it's not bad. It's pretty stable. It's a little bit of wiggle in there, and that's okay. That's okay. Now the other thing that I did, just so that you know, is on the back side I also put screws on the back of the table so that it keeps the whole thing straight and level and doesn't wiggle around and bounce up and down on the back either. So it solidifies the whole thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the monitor on. I'm actually going to put a strap on the monitor so it stays on the back of the bench, and the strap will come up through here on the back of this table. You'll see when I'm done. So here's a monitor on top of the stand from the back side, and as you can tell, I put the strap on there. That makes the monitor quite secure now. It's, as you can tell, I'm giving a good wiggle back and forth, and it's not coming off. And this is the reason I put the notches in for the feet. Now they can sit inside there. I did measure that out earlier, and that way if I move the bench back and forth, this thing is not going to fall down, fall off, or fall over. You don't get too much wiggle out of it, and it's very, very stable. So just to give you an idea of what the front side looks like, this is before I put my keyboard and monitor on, my keyboard and mouse and all that kind of stuff. That's basically the front side of the machine mounted up. So now when I'm looking at it, you can see that it's head height, and that way I don't have to strain my neck anymore looking at this monitor. Alright, just a quick video on making this, and if you like what you've seen on these little odd projects, just press like and subscribe at the bottom of the page or wherever that is on Richard's site, and we'll talk to you later.